Hello everyone, my name is AJ. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at the Golf 8 in the hot hatch diesel version, the GTD. When I first saw the Mark 8 Golf, the front headlamps kind of reminded me of that robot character from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Do you guys see that? Anyway, here in the GTD, unlike the GTI or the GTE, we don't have a colored line running through the front. In the GTI it's red, in the GTE it's blue. Here it's just a silver color. It doesn't really pop out, but what does pop because of this is the LED light which runs through the middle. So when it's lit up, it really shines. You get the optional IQ lights, which are the matrix LED, which work really quite well. Further down, you have the very athletic GTI-inspired bumper with this crescent-shaped plastic element down here, honeycomb structure for the grille, and I really do like the placement of these LED fog lamps. Kind of has a pattern that resembles a checkered flag, again referencing the racetrack, kind of showing its athletic, sporty character. It's 1.78 meters wide, so not too different from the standard Golf. So, what do you guys think of the front design? All right, let's take a look at the side profile. The first thing that grabs your attention are these gorgeous 19-inch rims. As standard, you get smaller rims, but I do like the way these fill out the wheel arches with those red calipers inside. You can also get the DCC, which is the dynamic chassis control, which is a continuously varying suspension damping system, and I think it's a great addition for a hot hatch. The suspension itself is lowered by 15 millimeters. Along the side, I also like these large side skirts, which visually bring the mass of the car lower to the ground and give it a more athletic stance. Overall, the Golf GTD is 4.28 meters long. At the back, on the top, you'll notice there is a nice spoiler. It's quite subtle. I would say it's more cosmetic than functional, but again, enhances the sporty appeal of the GTD. Towards the middle, very horizontally drawn LED rear lights. And finally, the good news is at the bottom you also have real exhaust tips. For the GTI you have two single ports on either side. With the GTE you actually have, unfortunately, fake cosmetic exhaust tips on the bumper where the real exhaust tip is further behind. But as you can see in the GTD you have a dual port exhaust offset to the left side. I think it looks really cool. What about you guys? Let's take a look under the hood. Well, actually, while we're at it, let's take a look at the hood itself. As you see, there's a manual strut bar, no hydraulic or pneumatic struts, which honestly, I don't really care for. I don't think the common consumer really looks under the hood that often. So, what powers the Golf GTD? Well, it's a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel engine, which makes 200 PS or metric horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque. It's mated to a 7-speed DSG, which is a dual clutch transmission, going only to front wheel drive with an electronic differential, which is basically a brake-based torque vectoring system. The 0 to 100 kilometer per hour is coming up in 7.1 seconds, so it's pretty quick, and the Vmax is 245 kilometers per hour. Overall, you can expect a mileage from around 5 to 5.8 liters for 100 kilometers. That's what I've been seeing, sometimes a little bit higher, like around 6 as well, but a good estimate would be about 5.8 liters. Inside the new Golf, well, the first thing that takes your attention is this completely digital cockpit. We'll speak a little bit more about that in a minute, But I also really like the driving position. So the seating position is really sporty. You have a lot of adjustment in the seat for height, of course moving it in and out. These are the sport seats with a nice tartan-like fabric checkered pattern, which is really comfortable with plenty of side bolstering to hold you in place and integrated head restraints. The steering wheel is also really nice and chunky. The new logo is not as prominent as the older logo. It's a little bit more subdued, but you do have a flat bottom. It's a very nice grip as well. The materials and the build quality are, I would say, at par with the other competitors. Soft touch on the top of the dashboard, a nice honeycomb texture in the middle, but fit and finish is not the best, but at this price point, I think you're getting what you're paying for. The plastics are definitely harder the lower you go down, but it's not the end of the world. There's plenty of storage spaces as well in the doors, a nice sized glove box. Because of the shift-by-wire 7-speed DSG, there's not much going on in the middle in the center console, so you have some trays and some other areas to put your things. A nice bottle holder, which is also adaptive, and of course a center armrest with a cubby hole inside. The steering wheel has a lot of different functions. On the left-hand side, you have buttons to control the assistance systems. For example, you have a button here for the travel assist, which works really well, and I'll tell you more about that once we're driving. You also have volume control over here. On the right-hand side, you have buttons to navigate through the menu and the virtual cockpit, as well as things like the steering wheel heater, which is really great for a freezing cold day like this, and to change the track. Now, when I say buttons, when in reality, they're just one big panel on each side. And this looks nice, but there's some problems that I've noticed. For example, since you don't have different bifurcated buttons, right over here on the right side, you see there are 3 different functions really close to each other. And even after a week and a half of living with this car, I find myself hitting the wrong button when I want to maybe turn the steering wheel heater off, but then I change the track instead. So it's not the best, and I think this could have been executed a little bit better. It does give you haptic feedback nevertheless. And what I also like is that you can use this as a swipe. So for example, since they're touch sensitive, you can use the swipe feature to change the volume really quickly. Of course, this has a 7-speed DSG, so you have paddle shifters on the left and right, although they're quite small, and I wish they were a little bit bigger and maybe a different color, like similar to this chrome accent here, to make that a little bit more sporty feeling. The virtual cockpit is highly customizable. Right now I have a view where you can see the tachometer in the middle with a nice speedo readout. There's also a lot of that honeycomb texture that we saw on the dashboard, as well as in the front grille, that is animated here as well. On the left there is a charge pressure, and there is a G meter on the right side. Not sure you really need a G meter. So in fact, you can go by pressing on the right button on the steering wheel and change that to something like, for example, a compass if you would like. There's a whole host of different options for each of them, for the left as well as the right. If you don't want this view altogether, you can press the view button on the steering wheel, and then, for example, there's one which has the driving data with, for example, your consumption, a navigation map, which is very useful if your co-passenger wants to connect their phone, so you don't have to worry about missing out on the navigation instructions. There's also a view with the assistance systems, and a very simplistic view as well. All right, now let's take a look at the infotainment system, and there's quite a lot to talk about this. I know that we've seen these kinds of systems before. It's not something new. In fact, I saw this in the Volkswagen Caddy that I drove recently, as well as some similar systems in, for example, the Cupra Formentor. And now, all said and done, I'm fairly happy with using touchscreens now. It's the way it is, and that's fine. What I don't like so much, and what we can start with, are these sliders. First of all, the climate control system is very glitchy. A lot of times when I turn the car on, it just does not want to work. And no matter what I do to try to change the temperature or press the Klima hotkey button down here for changing the temperature, it just does not work at all. And it's not a matter of turning the engine off at the traffic sign to restart the system. You really have to let the whole system boot down, which takes a couple minutes, wait, and then boot it up again. So it can only happen when you've parked and come to a stop at a parking lot or at home or something like that. So I'm really unhappy with the fact that this climate system was glitching out many times. Another thing I don't like are that these sliders, while fine, I can live with them, but they're not backlit. So at night, it's really impossible to know what you're touching and where. And if you really want to change the temperature, you have to go to the climate menu down here and then start changing the temperatures again manually. And that's too many touches and too many actions required in the dark when you're driving. So this should definitely have been backlit, these sliders over here, and at least a couple rollers or a couple physical buttons would have been so much nicer and so much safer. That being said, the rest of the system is pretty good. So it's very similar to a smartphone with the shapes. They also have gesture control, so if you want to wave your hand, it will also shift between the different home pages. You have a drawer from the top, for example, to turn off the auto engine kill switch, or the auto start stop. But this, you have to turn this off every single time you start the car again. It doesn't remember what you had previously, which I don't really like. You also have different app connections, so you can connect, for example, with Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, and also you can even use wireless Android Auto and things like that. So the modern stuff that you expect, which is very useful. You have a lot of different safety features on this car that you can also manipulate. For example, you can go directly to the assistant menu here, and you have the traffic sign recognition, the driving assist, which combines lane keeping assist, traffic sign recognition, adaptive cruise control, and all of these systems to work really well. And I'll show you that once we're driving. But you can also monitor things like your tire pressure and so on and so forth with these different menus. A lot of customization again. For example, there's a lot of really nice LED lighting inside the car in the cabin for the ambient lighting, and you can change the different color schemes. And that also reflects, for example, now all the logos, all the icons on the system are orange, as is my infotainment, my cockpit. And you can set these different things. And if you don't like any of the presets, you can create your own. So there's a lot of different options, and it's always fun if you're into this kind of stuff to set it up. Ultimately, maybe in the first week you have the car, you set these things up and you won't change it after that. There is also the optional Harman Kardon audio system, which sounds really nice. You have different variations in the way you want the sound profile to be, either more surround or more focused, different EQs and boosting, different profiles of the sound itself. So really nice system that you will definitely enjoy. Ultimately, on this main screen here, you have like 3 widgets, which is probably what you're going to be using at the most amount of time. You'll have a small navigation screen, your audio, and a couple other small widgets. The navigation works fairly well, but if you don't like the way this works, you can always just use your Google Maps from Android Auto, and some other information on the 3rd page. So overall, a good system, but I don't like these sliders, which are not backlit, and I wish the climate system would not be so glitchy. Further down, you have those shortcut buttons. Also a drive mode selector. You have Eco, Comfort, Sport, and Individual. And a couple USB-C ports down there, and an inductive phone charging port as well. Things here in the back seat are pretty good. Getting inside is fairly easy. The seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'8", or about 1.73 meters. And as you can see, I have plenty of knee room. I can also slide my feet under the front seat. There are pouches here to keep your phone, a larger pouch down here, door pockets for your water bottle. The seats themselves are very well contoured, enough under thigh support, good support on the side. The angle is also not too reclined and not too upright. It's not the most spacious, but definitely for 4 people, it's very nice and comfortable. You have ISOFIX points on the outside 2 seats as well as the front co-passenger seat. You have a center armrest with cup holders, which you can drop down as a ski hatch. You also have a 3rd climate zone with a couple of vents as well as a couple USB-C ports as well. So really well catered to back here in the seat. The trunk of the Golf GTD is 381 liters, which is a good amount. It's also very rectangular, so you can fit large suitcases very easily. You can flip the seats down in a 60-40 fashion along with that ski hatch. Although there are no switches over here, you have to use the switches on the seats themselves, so you have to reach over this parcel shelf. But on the good side, you can also drop the floor down so that you have more volume and more height to stack taller items. All right, so here we are driving the Golf GTD. I've found some beautiful winding roads, actually one of my favorite spots back where I live here in the Odenwald. And let's start talking about how the GTD behaves. Of course, there's different driving profiles, and this is best suited, this road is best suited with the sport mode. So let's switch to that. Nice. So the first thing that happens when you change to sport mode that you notice is the engine sound. And that's because the GTD has a sound actuator, which means that it helps resonate the engine sound and it gets piped into the cabin. Another thing that changes is the steering weight. Now this has a progressive steering rack, but the weight also increases in the sport mode, and it helps you feel, you know, to get a little bit more feedback from the steering wheel. The throttle response is also sharpened, so every small, minute undulation or input from your right foot is a lot more pronounced. It's a lot more reactive, the throttle body. Then the 7-speed DSG also shifts up much later, so it tries to give you as much of that meaty power band in the middle of the rev range. Since this being a diesel, there's not much power at the top end, but it really keeps the engine and the transmission in its sweet spot to generate all the power that you could that you need. The sound also really sounds kind of like a pseudo V8, and of course it's a 4-cylinder, but it's a diesel, so it's very low revving, and somehow it sounds like half a big American V8 because of the sound coming inside. You get that kind of a sound, so it kind of sounds like a old American V8. Throttle response is really nice, but you do feel a little bit of that turbo lag. It's not completely negligible, but it won't really be a problem in most scenarios, because again, that 7-speed DSG ensures that you're in the right power band at all times, but it's not as reactive as the GTI or the GTE for sure. The steering is really great. You have so much control. It's very precise. The progressive rack means that the amount of steering and the front wheels increases the further you go into the steering lock. So the more input you provide, further on it reacts a lot more faster. On the other side, in the middle, so around dead center, the steering is quite slow, and this is kind of good because it gives you a lot of finesse and a lot of ability to make minute corrections without the car feeling darty. And of course, as you go further, let's say around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, the steering rate is much faster, so you're able to go around most corners without ever having to leave from this position. Nothing new here, something that we've always seen, but really nice. Another thing that changes in the sport mode is the dynamic chassis control, so the DCC. In the sport mode, the suspension is a lot more firm, and it provides, the compression and the rebound is adjusted so that it tries to make the car as planted and keep it as flattened level as possible. Going through a little village, and in these little village streets, you do feel the bouncy, bumpy suspension in the sport mode a lot more prominently, but put it into comfort mode and you can feel a big change instantly. So yes, while the suspension is lower by 15 millimeters and it is a sporty hot hatch, in the comfort mode with the DCC, you get the best of both worlds. You're not really making a sacrifice, you don't feel that compromise. Brake pedal feel is also really nice. The differential at the front is not something really fancy, it's not a limited slip. It's still an electronic locking differential, which basically means it's a brake-based torque vectoring differential. So what happens is it will brake the inside wheel ever so slightly around corners if it needs to, and the amount of braking that it provides is also very calculated and precise, and that means that you kind of feel the front end of the car being sucked into the corner. So all said and done, this is a fantastic chassis. I mean, all Golf GTIs and GTEs and GTDs, I've driven the previous generation. I know this platform really well. I recently drove the Cupra Formentor, so this MQB platform is something that I'm very familiar with, and this is the throwing up no surprises, but that's a good thing in this case. You drive very spiritedly, you will definitely see numbers around 6.2 liters for 100 kilometers, maybe even 6.5. I mean, really, the sky's the limit. But if you drive with a light right foot and you make, use of the suggestions that the car provides with its EcoSense kind of eco suggestion system, where it will tell you, for example, If it knows that from 100 kilometers per hour the speed limit is going to be 50, we're coming up to a junction, it will tell you to lift off the accelerator, and then you can really get a lot better efficiency. There's a lot of black ice and snow on the road, so it's not the most safe to push, so I'm not going to push it too hard today. But in the eco mode, what happens now is the throttle response is a lot less sharp. It's very dull, to be honest, and this ensures that you don't accidentally rev the engine too high unnecessarily. The gearbox shifts up as quickly as possible so that you're in the lowest RPM. Even the air conditioning, the adaptive cruise control, these systems are also adapted to use as little fuel as possible. The engine is also quieter on the inside. If you want something in the middle, somewhere halfway, then you have comfort mode. And then you get a little bit more engine sound, you get a little bit more throttle response. The chassis is also really soft, but the steering is also a little bit, gives you a little bit better feedback. Let's keep it in sport mode because we're on a beautiful road. Let's talk a little bit about the suspension. So the suspension, like I said, with the DCC, you have different modes, so it is fairly comfortable. To aid the comfort, I think these seats are also really good. There's plenty of support, there's a lot of adjustment, albeit manually, and they're very soft but supportive. Side bolstering is also pretty good. I'm not the slimmest person and I fit here very well. If you are somebody who is on the healthier side, the side bolsters might be a little bit intrusive, but on the whole the seats are very comfortable. Sound insulation is also really nice. So of course in the sport mode the engine sound is audible because it's designed to be, but there's very little in terms of wind noise or road noise. Even on the Autobahn at high speeds, it is very quiet in here. So NVH levels are definitely really good. The navigation and the touchscreen system, I've spoken about that already. The navigation is not too bad, but yeah, the climate control could have been a little bit better. But what is really nice in terms of technology is the assistance systems. So you have the usual things like the blind spot monitoring, the rear camera is also really good quality, very good clarity, and you have cross traffic alert. It also has the self-parking, the steering assist, things like that, but it also has the travel assist. Now this system is basically a conjunction of the other hardware and software that already comes with these different driver assistance systems. So first of all, it takes into account the navigation. So it knows that, okay, you're going from 100 to a 50 zone, then it will automatically preemptively slow you down. It knows that there is the traffic sign recognition system is also running, so it knows what the speed limit is and it will automatically adjust the cruise control to the speed limit. It also has adaptive cruise control, so it knows the distance with the car in front, so it will maintain a safe distance and automatically come to a stop and set off again. It also has the lane keeping assist, which is, you know, the standard lane keep assist is really like a ping pong. It's a reactive emergency system, so when it knows you're going off the lane, it will kind of ping pong you back in. But in the case of the travel assist, it will proactively try to keep you in the middle of the lane at all times, and therefore it really gives you a very semi-autonomous safety net. And on the Autobahn, it's really great, but even in city conditions, it works pretty well. You have to keep in mind though that the lane keep assist will only work from time to time. It really depends. There is a logo that pops up on the head-up display as well as on the digital instruments, which tells you whether the car is able to recognize the lanes, and if it's green, only then will it work. But the system is really great because it also recognizes if it's a broken line, if it's a solid line, if there's a curb on the side. So it's not just looking at the lanes, but it also understands if it's, you know, a lane that you can cross or you shouldn't cross. And the steering also is not really the old kind of steering assist system where it just looks for you to make adjustments to the wheel to know that you're actually holding it, but there are actual sensors on the wheel which will actually be able to see if you're touching the wheel or not. But that being said, I found that the sensor is not always accurate. It's not always working well. It doesn't really recognize that I'm holding the wheel at all times. Sometimes it will just yell at me even though I am holding it. I find that you have to hold it around here rather than holding it on the top, which I tend to do especially when I'm on the Autobahn. But the system works really well. There's a button here which you can press, and now it will notice that the speed limit is 50. It will maintain that speed. It will keep me in the lane. So overall, really nice. There's also a lot of connected car tech. You can choose the privacy that you want, the level of privacy, and based on that, you can share some amount of data, all the data, or no location data. So on the whole, the GTD is definitely a car which strays to, very similar to the GTI, but because it's a diesel, you get that torque from low down, which is not as great as the GTE, but it's still better torque, and it comes in lower than in the GTI. But at the same time, you get better mileage. So if you're somebody who really spends a lot of time commuting every day, long hours on the Autobahn or on the highway, and you like to have a fast car to be able to do 180 kilometers per hour easily all day, but you don't want to spend so much money on fuel because this is going to be a daily affair for you, and at the same time you want something which is fun on twisty roads but compact enough, practical enough. So a hot hatch diesel, that's where that starts to make sense, and the Golf GTD is definitely one of the best in that little segment. Let's summarize this episode of the new Golf GTD. Prices start at around 39,000 euros, but when you add options like the IQ Matrix LED lights, the travel assist, and the panoramic roof, you're looking at numbers very easily around 47,000 euros. Well, that's a little bit more expensive than the GTI, as is the case with most diesel engine options versus petrol engine options. That being said, it's a little bit cheaper than the GTE, and you still get that really nice torque from the low end. Not as much as the GTE, of course, but a little bit more than the GTI. So what did I like and what did I not like about the GTD? Well, first of all, the chassis and the steering are fantastic. Very agile, very capable, very nimble, and a lot of fun to drive. What I didn't like was the fact that the infotainment system would glitch out, especially the climate control, and the fact that the sliders are not backlit. I think for 47,000 euros, it can be very frustrating to have these problems as an owner. But what's the right version for you? Is it the GTI or the GTD or the GTE? In my opinion, the GTI is for the purist. The petrol engine that you can rev out really high with the manual transmission, that's where the real purists will enjoy themselves. For the GTE, if you have charging infrastructure at your house, then it's fantastic because you can plug it in overnight or on the weekends, and you have plenty of electric boost to have that nice acceleration, but also you get a lot of tax benefits and so on. The GTD is for those who have a long commute on the Autobahn every day and you want that extra power, because that's where the car really shines. It's got plenty of torque and power for overtakes. 200 kilometers per hour is very composed and with no fuss at all, and you're not burning so much diesel. You get a lot of mileage as well. And when you want to have fun on twisty roads, that chassis comes into its own. Therefore, I think if running costs are going to be an issue for you and you're going to be spending a lot of time on the Autobahn, the GTD might just be the one for you. That's my verdict. Let me know what you think. Put it down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.